And next, I would like to give the floor to the permanent representative to the United Nations of Sri Lanka, Mohan Pieris. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, 15 years ago, the United Nations passed the Treaty of the Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities, which marked a pivotal step in international law to ensure that those with disabilities are guaranteed full and equal protection and the rights under the law. The Convention further indicated the paradigm shift of the global community to securing and protecting the rights of all marginalized people the world over. As we commemorate 15 years of this Convention during these unprecedented times, the theme for this session is indeed timely. It is also in synchronization with the Sustainable Development Goals that have to ensure that disability is on the development agenda, providing clear commitment to ensuring that people with disabilities are not left behind. The Convention celebrates human diversity and human dignity. Its main message is that persons with disabilities are entitled to the full spectrum of human rights and fundamental freedoms. I wish to recall that the 2030 Agenda encourages member states and civil society to be conscious and intentional in the inclusion of people with disabilities in programs, policies, and frameworks implemented. The agenda drives home the message that people with disability cannot be an afterthought. Instead, we saw a shift towards the inclusion of special mechanisms or programs to ensure their specific needs are met. Through this historic paradigm shift, the Convention forges new ground and requires new thinking. Its implementation demands innovative solutions. To get it right from the start, the Convention's aims, concepts, and provisions must be well understood by all stakeholders, from government officials to parliamentarians and judges, from representatives of the United Nations specialized agencies, funds and programs to professionals in areas such as education, health, and support services, from civil society organizations to staff of national human rights institutions, from employers to those representing the media, and from persons with disabilities and their representative organizations to the general public. Although the Convention in the 2030 Agenda and the UN Charter held the theoretical provisions and framework for states to include peoples with disability, the realization and implementation was slow, and the shortcomings were aptly highlighted with the onset of COVID-19. In Sri Lanka, Chapter 3 of the Constitution of Sri Lanka permits legislation and executive action that creates advantages for disadvantaged persons. We ratified CRPD on the 8th of February 2016. We have a piece of legislation called the Rana Viru Seva Act, which is enacted by the Parliament of Sri Lanka, by which disabled members of the forces post-conflict was provided aftercare. In 1998, we had a public administration circular in which 3% of vacancies in public services and public companies should be filled by people with disabilities possessing requisite qualifications and whose disabilities would not be a hindrance to the performance of duties. In 1992, Trust Fund Act for the Rehabilitation of the Visually Handicapped provides for education and training opportunities. In 1996, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act number 28 was enacted. In 1996 again, the Social Security Board Act number 17, which provided for a pension and insurance for people with disabilities in the case of accidents or old age, was enacted. In 1996 again, National Health Policy provides for the improvement of the quality of life, reducing preventable diseases, running health programs, etc. In 1997, general educational reforms introduced the inclusion of children who have disabilities. Mr. Chairman, the CBR program aiming in Sri Lanka, aiming at placing the responsibility for people with disabilities on the community. A rural rehabilitation committee is established at the village level by social service officers, provided with 18 days of training for this role. The committees involve village officials, community members, trained volunteers, and members selected from families of people with disabilities. Awareness programs help identify and recruit volunteers trained for 12 days, who then identify people with disabilities through home visits, liaising with their families and the community to link with disabilities to relevant health and social services. Sadly, Mr. Chairman, we must accept, although that globally the realization and practical mechanisms fell short of the promises outlined in the Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities. We must increase collaboration between people living with disability and local and national government for better understanding and to fill the gaps in society. If we are to talk about social and economic development of our states, we cannot be remiss in our responsibility to be conscious of the value and untapped potential this group can provide us with. May I finally take this opportunity to say a big thank you to the NGOs, other organizations, and the UN agencies for the work you do for our disabled brothers and sisters in various parts of the world. May you be blessed with the energy and the resolve to carry on this work in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the ambassador for his statement, and I